Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Miro with Our Daily Planet, and today we're really honored to have Philadelphia Councilman-at-Large Derek Green with us. And Councilmember Green, before he ran for public office in Philadelphia, really was connected with all sorts of policy issues. So we're so happy to have his breadth of expertise because Philadelphia really is such a young city. There's a lot happening there. There's a lot of progressive policy that the rest of the nation is really watching and looking to. And in this election is really going to be an integral city, for a lot of the issues around climate and environmental justice that so many of us care about. So we're really thrilled to have the council member with us. And I wanted to ask, firstly, council member, you've been working for the city council and in politics, as I mentioned before, for quite a while. So what drew you to local politics in Philadelphia?
I've been involved in local politics for some time. What drew me really to local office, especially at the city council and the legislative branch, is that you really get a chance to touch people's lives in ways that at the state level or the federal level you don't have the same opportunity. My office, although we're in COVID-19, we're working remotely, but we're in City Hall. People come to our office every day. They raise issues, they drop off petitions, they say hello, they say I don't like why you voted on this issue, and raise concerns anywhere from quality of life issues like trash pickup to more macro issues like climate change and global warming and recycling. So for me, I've always had that interest of how we can connect with people on a day-to-day basis and do what we can to help solve the issues that they're dealing with in their lives every day.
And particularly now, it's really hot in the East. I'm sure your residents in Philadelphia are really struggling with the heat, but this is something we're going to have to deal with more and more in the future given climate change. So I'm wondering how the city is working to protect residents from heat illness, particularly as the pandemic is also really taxing the healthcare system. How are you preparing to deal with it in the future, and how are you dealing with it now?
Well, some of the real challenges that we are having now is that normally this time of year, we do a lot of fan giveaways that we often get from, local retailers or other stores and businesses that provide those fans because they know so many of our seniors and those who are dealing with other issues really need access to cool air during the heat of the summer. But due to COVID-19, so many of those same businesses are not doing well. They're really struggling. And we're doing a lot at a local level to try to help them. So we've tried to do some other more creative ideas. We've had various locations that are cooling centers or cool down locations. Some of our libraries are being used in that regard. Some of our schools are being used in that regard. And because of this challenge of COVID-19 and people are physically distancing, this is an issue that's important to me because I serve as the vice chair of the Council Committee on Aging. For getting elected to City Council, I served as the board chair of a seasoned citizen center in Philadelphia called Center in the Park. Plus, I have two parents who are, seasoned citizens, as I say, and I check in on them every day. And we're still using some of the traditional things that we've done in the past. For example, the Philadelphia Corporation for Aging does have a heat helpline that people can call if they have issues and concerns regarding heat. So we're trying to blend some of the things that we've done in the past, but also look at how we can do things a little differently during this COVID-19 pandemic.
And Councilmember Green, to follow up on that question, how can the federal government support the city of Philadelphia as you're working to emerge from the coronavirus crisis? There are so many pieces of new issue areas that have emerged that are really threatening city budgets and have really, taken precedent. So what's the best way that, lawmakers in DC can ensure that a city like Philadelphia has the resources it needs to really have an adequate transition out of this pandemic?
Provide resources to cities and counties like Philadelphia and states that allow for revenue reimbursement. The initial federal CARES dollars that came to Philadelphia and cities all around the nation was really only used and only could be used for COVID-19 testing, contact tracing, or reimbursements for expenses directly tied to the pandemic. But for so many cities like Philadelphia, people have not been able to go to your normal restaurant. We've lost a significant amount of money due to not being able to collect the non-resident wage tax, and that's for cities all around the nation. And as a board member for the National League of Cities, we've been promoting Cities Are Essential campaign to really press upon our colleagues in the federal government and the federal legislature to make sure that as they're looking at some additional federal dollars to help regarding COVID-19, they allow cities to have revenue reimbursement to make up for that lost revenue. And that's so important for our cities. We just passed our budget, most cities, end the fiscal year in June. And so we had a $749 million deficit. And so that caused a significant strain on our budget and really impacts our ability to provide the resources and the quality of life amenities that our citizens are looking for.
I wanted to ask you about another hat you wear. You were appointed by the mayor as the chairman of the Philadelphia Gas Commission, and I just wanted to know a little bit more about what that role entails and ask you about how you in that role balance, and there seems to be growing opposition to, and yet fracking is a huge and important part of the Pennsylvania economy. So I just wondered how you're thinking about these issues as you are in that role of the chair of the Gas Commission in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia Gas Works is the largest municipal-owned utility in the nation, maybe one of the largest in the world. And PGW is an entity that we deliver hundreds of thousands of constituents, customers, gas, which provides heating for not only warmth, but also for people to cook the food, which is a basic necessity. And the Gas Commission is an oversight entity for PGW. So we are somewhat like a mini regulator for Philadelphia Gas Works. And so we approve to the Gas Commission their operating budget, their capital budget, some of the other measures that they do. I'm always trying to balance between the ratepayers, who are citizens in the city of Philadelphia, and constituents as an at-large member of council, and also trying to think towards the future. I am someone who has been a strong proponent for dealing with environmental changes and how do we deal with climate change. Right now, we are working on a diversification study for PGW, finding ways how we can diversify from fossil fuels. And that's a tricky, delicate challenge because Philadelphia has a very high poverty rate, about 26%. And so how do we keep the cost of heating and energy as low as possible for moderate and low-income ratepayers and constituents? But at the same point, we've got to find ways to diversify and move beyond what we've been doing in the past. So we're trying to balance these ideas, which is difficult, but PGW has been there before. We started as a lighting company and then it transitioned into a heating company. And so based on that history, I think we can transition in a new type of energy company.
We really appreciate your time today, Councilmember Green, and we know that we're going to have to learn from places like Philadelphia, where they've confronted some of these very complicated challenges with natural gas and building natural gas facilities and keeping rates down and also keeping people cool and keeping the air clean. It's a lot to try to do with not as many resources as you used to have given the pandemic. So we really want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. I think conversations like this are so important for policymakers like myself, and also broadening this conversation. I was just on a panel yesterday about climate change in the African American community, and getting a broader conversation about this issue. Often when I'm talking about either recycling or climate change, I may be the only person of color in the room. So it's important that we diversify some of the messengers and we make the message more accessible, because for some, they're dealing with the daily issue of how do I put food on the table? How do I maintain my job? How do I stay healthy during COVID-19? The climate change issue is something that impacts people on a daily basis, but at times seems not accessible. So having these conversations allows people to realize how these issues impact their day-to-day life, just like some of the issues I just talked about.
Thank you so much, Council Member. We really appreciate you taking the time. This is a really wonderful conversation, and we'd love to follow up with you maybe a few months down the way, because Philadelphia really seems to be a city to watch. And everything you said about how you're pairing smart policy with balancing energy needs at the same time, navigating this new COVID reality we have is really something that's commendable and remarkable, and we'd love to hear more about it as it progresses. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care.